Hey guys, we're going to get started back on number 2, self-test 24. In July, Blessing Hospital reported the following surgical data. You've got admissions, discharges, deaths. This doesn't say live, so the deaths are included in the discharges. Anesthetics administered, surgical procedures performed, and patients operated on. In our deaths, the same thing you saw from the last problem. We've got a good breakdown over here about over under 48 hours, over under post-op, and then anesthetic agents. So A asks us to calculate the anesthesia death rate, and I have 0%, and that's because we have 0 deaths due to anesthetic agents. So you might have had 0 or left it blank or had 0%. So whatever you put and however it was graded in Moodle, it's 0. Postoperative death rate. So when you take a look at the breakdown under deaths, you see you have 2 under 10 days post-op multiplied by 100, and your formula asks for you to look for the patients operated on, which is 260 for 0.77%. So the gross death rate, which is back here, at the beginning of the chapter, so the gross death rate is the number of inpatient deaths, including our newborn. So we've got 9 deaths multiplied by 100 over the total number of discharges. And remember, we said that this doesn't say live, so we are going to assume that the deaths are included in the discharges, so we're going to use 262 on the bottom for 3.44%. The net death rate, remember we set the net death rate up a lot like the gross death rate, and that's on page 96. And the gross death rate says the total number of inpatient deaths, including newborns, for the period. So we know that was 9, minus those deaths under 48 hours. And if you go back to your breakdown, that's listed right here. And so after you've got 9 minus 3 multiplied by 100 over the total number of discharges, minus those same 3 deaths under 48 hours for 2.32%. So then you have another page that's scanned in that has those marked out. So we'll flip on through that. And then you get to the next portion of your worksheets where it says answers should be correct to 2 decimal places. So we're going to work through that. We've got Serendipity Hospital in July, the OB unit. So let's take a look at what's in our table. So we've got the bed count, admissions, live discharges, then deaths. So you see I've bracketed out to the side where it says total number of discharges to remind myself that you have to add these 2 together to be able to have the total number of discharges. You've got autopsies, which you haven't seen yet, but just know that we're headed there next chapter. Delivered, undelivered, and then C-sections. But A asks you to calculate the maternal death rate, and maternal death rate is, I'll just flip past it. It is listed here on page 103, the number of direct maternal deaths for a period over the number of OB discharges, including deaths for the period. So we are going to find the maternal deaths. Since it's the OB unit, we've been given 1 death. So 1 multiplied by 100 over 102, and let me write that breakdown. That's 101 live plus 1 death for 0.98%. The C-section rate, you need the total number of C-sections that were performed over the total number of delivered. So you've got 27 C-sections over the total number of deliveries. So let's talk about why you see 2 sets of twins here. So the way that this works for the C-section rate, which is probably I don't think it's in this particular chapter, but it's asking for actual over potential here basically. So you're using the number of C-sections to the total number of deliveries. Now what would have been nicer is that if it had C-section and then vaginal listed under it and you got a better breakdown under delivered, but this is all you've been given. So in this scenario, you're just going to take the total number of deliveries. The 2 sets of twins only makes a difference when you're counting births, because, as we know, we're not asking our mamas to have 2 separate deliveries for twins, how awful would that be? So we're counting it as one delivery. So if you're wondering why that 2 sets of twins is over there. But nonetheless, we had 27 C-sections out of a total number of 89 deliveries for 30.34%. So that was kind of an actual over potential. Excuse me, goodness. October newborn data include, and then you've been given all the information here. And for fetal deaths, you have a breakdown. So you remember in your textbook when I told you that you guys are just going to have to learn and memorize that gestation and weight for those fetal deaths. This is on page 109 that you could be given that information, and here it is. So knowing that A asked to calculate the fetal death rate, you'll see that I went through and categorized early, intermediate, late, based on the gram weight. So now I have all the data that I need to be able to calculate the formula. So the fetal death rate, and I've calculated it down here, asks for the total number of intermediate and late fetal deaths for a period. So I'm going back to my table, 1, 2, 3, 4, because we're not counting that early. 4 times 100 over live births. So don't try to memorize the formula and use discharges. You need the total number of live births, which is 305, plus those 4, right, plus intermediate and late fetal deaths for 1.29%. B asked for the newborn death rate. You had 1 newborn death multiplied by 100 over the total number of discharges, 311. You do not add the 1 back in because you do not see live discharges for 0.32%. All right, last page. So we're going to get to another table of information that's looks a little different again because you've got some autopsy information listed here, but remember I said we're going there next chapter anyway, so it's good for you guys to go ahead to get used to see that. So Hillcrest Hospital by service, admissions, discharges, deaths, no lives, so they're included, autopsies, deliveries, C-sections, infections, and consultations. So you've got a lot of extra information that you don't need to just calculate F and G. F asks for the newborn death rate, so we're going to look at the newborn row. We're going to find 1 newborn death multiplied by 100 over the total number of newborn discharges, which is 218. Again, this doesn't say live, so the total number of discharges are reflected in this column. You're going to have 0.46%. Maternal is big and fancy for OB, right? So hopefully you made that leap and got that right. You had 1 OB death multiplied by 100 over the total number of OB discharges, 255 for 0.39%. All right, last problem. So number 2, we're back to fetal deaths again. It's a good thing I stayed on that page. So a newborn nursery record for August reveals, and so you've got all of your information in your table, then a breakdown of the 6 fetal deaths. A asked for the fetal death rate for August, and you'll see, so this is by week of gestation as shown in your table on 109, and you know that we aren't counting the earlies, but we need to designate them anyway so we know how many we've got. Early, intermediate, late. So hopefully you got all that correct. We have 4, again, 1, 2, 3, 4, intermediate and late fetal deaths multiplied by 100 over total number of discharges, which are, total number of live births, which are admissions, right? So let me write that down for you, live births. You know, that's how these babies get admitted. They're born. So admissions, 265 plus intermediate and late fetal deaths for the period for 1.49%. Then your newborn death rate, you've got 2 newborn deaths over total number of newborn discharges. Doesn't say live, so the deaths are included, 260 for 0.77%. So hopefully this helps. Make sure you are taking a look in Moodle and adjusting your answers and figuring out what you got wrong, and if you really missed it, or if it's just the way that I had the answer in Moodle, trying to figure out what you did wrong or what you have questions about before you take your quiz. And you guys, if you have any questions or see any mistakes, let me know. Otherwise, you should be ready for the quiz. Thanks.